Whether you're doing a podcast or other video content, using your hands effectively is a great way to pull in your listeners, emphasize your points, and overall help your viewers feel more comfortable as they watch you. So I'm going to give you 2 things not to do with your hands and with your shot as you're filming, and a few tips on what to do with them and how to make it more effective as you record. So tip number 1, don't not move your hands. If all of a sudden I just put my hands down and talked at you for about 7 minutes without moving any hand or even my head at all, this is going to start getting a little weird. It just doesn't feel natural. It's not typically how people communicate. And so don't not move your hands. See, it felt weird, right? Like I'm not doing anything with my hands. So yeah, just don't do that. Even if all you're doing is small gestures or just moving them while you talk, it feels more natural. And honestly, there's a lot of science that goes into how people perceive you, whether you have your hands open as you talk, or if you're doing something like have your arms folded or just more closed up. There's actually great TED Talks about this. I'll link one down in the description. But here's a little clip about how others can perceive you depending on how you use your hands.
But you're prepared to get up and do what I want because you feel like I won't threaten you, I won't intimidate you, Ellen won't make me look silly. This could be a bit of fun. That's what your mind's thinking because I use a signal that appealed to your ancient brain.
All right, number 2, don't have your camera shot so tight that we never see your hands. If I were to zoom in, and maybe this was my constant camera shot the whole time, I could be moving my hands around a lot, emphasizing my points, everything looks great, but you would never see it. So make sure we at least have a wide enough shot where we can see your hands at least most of the time. It doesn't have to be a full body shot or even a full torso shot. Like you can see here, I'm about chest up to the head, and you still see my hands plenty of the time. You see every time I gesture or point to something. And so just make sure your shot is wide enough that we actually see your hands throughout the video. Now here's 3 tips to help you get a little more comfortable using your hands. If you're making points, especially if you're making a comparison, a great thing you can do is say, I'm talking about this thing, and then I'm going to compare it to this thing. This is a simple practice. You're comparing 2 things. It's a simple visual, and it helps the viewer stay a little more engaged. Or if there's something that you're directly saying to your viewer, maybe you're trying to grow a video podcast, or you're looking for your niche, or how to stay consistent with producing your show. Well, I'm actually emphasizing towards the camera and towards the lens. That's actually helping you understand I'm talking to you directly. Yes, you watching right now. And you can even get more direct like I just did. I wasn't planning it, but I kind of did the 2-hand like tunnel vision thing, like, hey, right here, focus in. All those are just little visual cues that will actually help build trust between you, your audience, and your viewers. And again, emphasize your points so it connects on multiple levels. They're hearing what you're saying and seeing what you're gesturing. Now, tip number 2, this might require a little bit of gear, but you can actually hold things towards the camera lens with your hands. And depending on the camera you have, it can focus on it quickly, and that can give you a different visual perspective without having multiple cameras. Maybe I'm talking about this phone, and how with it, you can record high-quality video and audio content with remote guests when you use Riverside. By the way, you could try Riverside for free by clicking the link in the description. But having a phone like this, and then holding it up close to the camera lens, you can see it's now focused on this, and with the same camera, I now have a very different shot. You get to focus on the object in my hand. Now, if you have an iPhone and modern Android phones, some of them can actually do that refocusing on objects that you hold close to the lens. You don't need something fancy. But if you're interested, I actually have a Sony a7 IV mirrorless camera with a Sigma 35mm f1.4 lens. All those fancy numbers and names mean that this is a nice camera with a lens that has a very low aperture number. The lower that aperture or f-stop number is, the more that it's going to blur a background and keep the subject in focus. That's why this background behind me is a little blurry and I'm clear. And if I hold up an object to the lens, it will focus on that and you'll see everything gets even more blurry behind me. I'll put links to this gear down in the video description, but if you want to learn about my entire creator setup, how I have this camera, and also a top-down camera, which is another great way to utilize your hands and holding objects to refocus, you can learn about my entire desk setup by clicking the video above, or that link is in the description as well. Now, tip number 3, and kind of an advanced use of your hands in a video, is actually tracking it and using animations with your hand motions to really emphasize a point. A tech YouTuber who does this to great effect is Mr. Who's the Boss. Especially in the first 30 seconds of his videos, he just has wild text and animations, very eye-catching, keeping your attention, and those first 30 seconds are critical. You can see the words following his hands and emphasizing what he's saying, and there's a couple plugins that actually make the process pretty simple. So I'm going to take this video I have right here where I kind of point over to my side. There's M-Tracker 3D, which is really helpful. I'm going to use this M-Callouts, which again is another MotionVXF plugin. And if I drag this onto my timeline in Final Cut, this also works in Premiere and DaVinci Resolve. You see, I actually have the square box, which is going to track whatever's inside. Let's say I wanted to track my finger as I point to something. I'm going to move the box onto my pointer finger, and then you'll see there's a track option. Now it's actually going to track my finger. It might take a little longer if you're tracking a longer clip, but now you'll see it's actually tracking my finger the whole time, and making the text follow it. I can track that object or my hand. And now if I play it, you'll see it's actually tracking the side of the phone and the text is going to follow my movements for greater effect. So those are 2 things to avoid and 3 tips for getting more comfortable using your hands on camera. If you have any questions, leave in the comments below this video. I answer all of those personally. And if you want a walkthrough of how to start and build a video podcast, I walk through the entire process step by step, how to connect things to your computer and how to use Riverside to record high quality video and audio with remote guests. You can check out that video above here. And if you want to optimize your podcast for every app, YouTube Music, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, there are unique features for each, and I walk you through those right up here. Hit that like button and subscribe before you go. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.